What's up, y'all? Thanks for tuning in to a new episode of Jett's Fishing Adventure. We're out here on Woods Reservoir, and we got a special video for you. We're going to try to do a top 3 baits for the month of February. We're going to do this every month, and I'm wanting to dive more into how to fish one out of a kayak. A lot of people do the top 3, top 5 baits, but it's a lot harder to fish out of a kayak using some of the baits than talk about in the videos. So I'm wanting to kind of explain the tips and tricks on how to fish these baits from a kayak. A lot of people don't realize in a kayak, if you jump from a boat, you're giving so much more to the fish than in a boat. You got the line stretch, you got the rods bending, and you have the kayak moving. So in this video, I hope to explain some of the little tips and tricks that I've learned and some of the baits that I use for this month. Without further ado, let's jump into this video. Right there. My favorite bait to fish when the water is below 60 degrees, water temp's 48 out here now, would have to be a good old Shad wrap. This is the Rapala Shad wrap number 5. That's my favorite. Not sure what color that is. If you know, comment below. But that's my favorite. I run it on 15-pound Seaguar, and I have a 10-pound red label leader. I like throwing it on a 7'4" to 7'6" medium light spinning rod. The reason for that is you can really launch a light bait like this a long way, and when one comes up and hit it, the drag on the spinning rods I think is better than the bait caster. You can kind of finesse them a little bit more, because with treble hooks you lose a lot of fish. Spinning rod, you can limit the fish that you lost, and it's just a fun fight. I love catching big smallmouth on a spinning rod. Typically where I like to fish Shad wrap is around riprap. The number 5 dives about 5 foot. And the number 7 is a little bit bigger, dives about 9 foot. Depending on what size line you have, I can get this down to about 6 using real light line and long cast. And when the water's cold, the smallmouth and any fish, when it's sunny outside, tends to go up on riprap bank, rock bank, and starts to kind of sun out. It's warmer up shallow. So if you use a Shad wrap, you cover a lot of water, and you can actually find where the fish are located, and then you can slow down after you found them and catch some more fish if you're in a tournament or you're just having fun. So I typically look for riprap banks with mud bottom. You can fish it. I try to stay away from banks with grass because there's treble hook bait and you get hung up so much. And wood, try to stay away from wood too, because you'll lose a lot of baits. That is my number 1 pick for February. I love fishing one. I can't wait to show you some more videos fishing this bait throughout this month. So my number 2 bait, and if you know me, y'all know I love throwing a bad boy jig, is a bad boy jig. This is the Junkyard Dog color. I love this color. It's paired up with the brand new Lazy Gill and the Timber Crawl by Torrent Outdoors. This little jig right here and crawl combination is deadly. Definitely when the water is cold. One thing about the Torrent Crawl, as you can see, the little crawl sections, you can adjust the action by how many spots you pull off. So I like during the colder months, you kind of want a little bit of a duller action, and so you don't really want to pull off all those little tabs. So I just pull the one on the pincher, and that's plenty of action for when the water's cold. Where I fish this typically is around riprap 2, bridge pilings. I like fishing points, sandy points, rocky points, anywhere with jig. You can start skipping them on the brush piles, fishing out deep on brush, fishing up shallow on brush. But I typically fish around riprap, deeper riprap where you can't get a Shad wrap down, or I fish brush piles out deep during this time of the month. I love a bad boy jig. I love fishing jigs. The bite's just aggressive. I fish it on an ALX toad face. It's a 7'2" medium heavy plus. And then I have a Shimano Corrado reel, 30-pound Seaguar smackdown braid. And then I use typically around a 15 to 20-pound Seaguar AbrazeX leader. I like the AbrazeX because, you know, you're fishing around riprap, rock, and you run that line through a lot. And the AbrazeX does not it's abrasive resistance, so you can actually pull through there and not have little nicks after a while. I've fished this jig around docks a lot during the summer months with a AbrazeX, and I never have to retie. This is my number 2. It's my favorite out of all the list, but I put it at number 2 because it is kind of a, it's an easy technique, but you kind of have to know how to fish it. Shad Rap, you can just throw that sucker around all day and you'll catch some fish. Jig, they kind of have to want a jig to get bites on it, but when you do catch a jig fish in the wintertime, it's usually a good fish. My number 3 for the month of February, you cannot go cold water fishing without an Alabama rig. I, for one, hate an Alabama rig, I'm not gonna lie, because it's hard to fish one out of a kayak. And I have found throughout the years, this is I can't remember the name of it, but if you're gonna be fishing out of a kayak with an Alabama rig, you kind of want a smaller profile, less drag. In a kayak, if you got one of those big heavy ones, it kind of wants you to pull you. But that's where a Hobie Pro Angler comes into play. Definitely the 360, because you can actually adjust the drive away from where you're fishing. That way, if it starts pulling you can just kick a few times. But I actually have this Alabama rig rigged up with 3 Torrent in the brand new pure white color that we just came out with, and then 2 little 2.5-inch dummy baits, because in Tennessee you can only have 3 hooks. In Alabama and other states you can have as many hooks on it. So check your local regulations and see how many hooks you can have. The bottom 2 right here, I always run a little bit heavier, and then the middle one I run a little bit lighter. The reason behind that, it will run in the water true. If you have one that's heavier, it'll run off to the side. So places I usually fish this is out deep around brush piles. You kind of have to keep it up, or I will fish it around points and stuff like that. I don't usually fish an Alabama rig too much, because I much rather fish like just a single underspin or just a single swim bait. But when the bite's right and they're schooling up, an Alabama rig cannot be beat. The rod I use is a Dugout Silverado. It's a 7'6" heavy. But the key to a good Alabama rig rod, in my opinion, and definitely in a kayak, is having one that's got a good tip. This one has kind of a softer tip than a lot of heavies do, and that's why I like this rod more than any other rod I've used for Alabama rigs. And then I use 20-pound Tatsu with a Shimano SLX reel. This is a really good setup for swim baits, like big glide baits, and Alabama rigs. And this is actually the rod I use for glide bait. So if you know any good top baits, always have that one extra bonus bait that's kind of a wild one. So for me, it's the glide bait. This is the Mean Mouth. I just picked up a couple at the Lebanon show, the Tennessee Boat and Fishing Expo. I'm really happy with the quality of these, and they're only $25. Go check them out. A glide bait can be a very fun bait to fish, and in the wintertime fish, the bigger ones, they're not very active, so they kind of want to sit there, and if they see some smaller bait come by, they might not run for it. But a big glide bait like this, it has the drawing power, and so a big fish that's sitting there kind of cold, don't really want to move, he'll come for a big bait like this just to fill up his belly, so you don't have to keep moving for a little bait. What I like to fish this on is the same rod, that Silverado 7'6", medium or heavy. I fish it with the 20-pound Tatsu. It's just a fun bait to fish. It is really cool to catch some giants. So if you're kind of wanting to go and catch some big fish, and you don't care if you catch a lot, then check out one of these glide baits. If you want a good glide bait for cheap, check out Mean Mouth for only $25. So that's a steal in the glide bait game. So I hope you enjoyed this video. It's just some of the baits that I personally use. This was kind of a hard video because I know I tournament fish, so I kind of hate to give out all my secrets, but I might have held back one or two. I hope you enjoyed watching, and I hope I can teach y'all some stuff. If you're struggling out there this time of year, get some of these baits that I've talked about, and you can typically go out and catch some fish. This time of year, always look for banks that have the sun on it for the longest. Look for riprap, because that stuff will warm up quickest. So I hope you enjoyed. Like, comment, and subscribe for more. See y'all.